It is your boy T, and it has been such a long time, and it is finally time for another Have You Seen That with T movie review. And today, let's talk about Gladiator II. Gladiator II stars Paul Mescal, Pedro Pascal, Denzel Washington, Connie Nielsen, John Heschinger, I think I'm saying that right, and I'm drawing a blank. What is my man's name? Joseph Quinn. There you go. Joseph Quinn, who is going to be starring in the upcoming Fantastic Four film. Now, the original Gladiator, full disclosure, I'm not the biggest fan of the original Gladiator. I find it to be very overrated, but it won an Oscar, right? It solidified Russell Crowe as an A-list actor, and I hope this movie does the same thing for Paul Mescal, who is absolutely fantastic. So Gladiator II takes place 16 years after the events of the original Gladiator. Maximus Aurelius, thank goodness they didn't do what they kept saying they were going to find a way to bring him back. I don't need to see an older Maximus. I don't need to see the guy who needed to hang up his sword 15 years ago and rise from the dead. I didn't need any of those Jesus-like properties that they were talking about in a way to make Gladiator 2 that they tried to make 10 years ago. But we did get so lazy. This is his son. This is the story of Lucius, the little plot device from the first Gladiator film. He's all grown up. He's grown up to become Paul Mescal, who, man, this guy reminds me so much of a young, less problematic, jacked Mel Gibson. When I was listening to him talk, I was like, man, this guy would have been fantastic for the Mad Max films. But I digress. Back to Gladiator 2, we pick up 16 years later, and Lucius is all grown up. Of course, he's grown up to become this great general, this great leader, but his army loses. In the process, he loses his wife. After his army loses, he gets traded to become a slave, and then he becomes a gladiator who can buy his own freedom. And the person who owns him throughout the movie is Denzel Washington, who plays the character Macrinus. Now, while Denzel Washington is great in everything he does, I don't think he fit quite with this film. I mean, any chance you get to get Denzel in your film, you have to take it. But for some reason, it just didn't hit. Everybody kept saying he stole the movie. He was playing this somewhat flamboyant politician type character, and that is not the way I enjoy my Denzel, right? I don't enjoy that, and I don't think he did a good job doing it. Yeah, he was Denzel, and he was showing those teeth throughout the film. He showed so much teeth throughout this movie. I found that to be hilarious. It just felt a little off to me. But let's go ahead and talk about the highlights of Gladiator 2. One of the biggest highlights, of course, is the action set pieces. It's what we came here for. In the original Gladiator, Maximus fights a tiger, a bloody Bengal tiger. And if you've seen Wayne's World 2, for some reason, that sticks with me this many decades later. But he fought this Bengal tiger. And in this movie, Lucius fights not only some rabid monkeys, he fights killer sharks. He fights a rhinoceros, right? They up the ante in animals to the max in this movie, and these monkeys were just out of control. Like these orangutans, I don't even know what you consider them, but they were just rabid. But you know who was even more rabid? Lucius. Boy, he does a great job dispatching of the head monkey or the leader of the monkeys in this gladiator pit fight. And he does a great job of somehow taking out a rhinoceros. And then the killer sharks, where these sharks came from, one will never know, but Ridley Scott found a way to get them in the film. And that was impressive in itself. These killer sharks, they came out of nowhere. They were in a scene that made absolutely no sense, but Ridley Scott somehow made it work. Bless his heart. He's trying to make up for Napoleon in the worst way. But another just highlight of the movie is Paul Mescal. Like I said, he reminded me of a young Mel Gibson, and he was just fantastic. Did he reach the heights of Russell Crowe's Maximus? No, but that's because people have raised Maximus into this cult-like hero status, and you're not gonna beat that. Like it's gonna really be hard to top that. That would just be like Mutt, aka Shia LaBeouf, taking over for Indiana Jones. Nobody wants to see that, right? And people didn't really want to see this, but they got it. We got Paul Mescal, and he did a really great job. Like there was something just special about his performance. There was something special about the character that just worked really well with this film. And I had an enjoyment watching him on the screen, this stoic, heroic character, the hero's journey. We saw it. He was very despondent at the beginning of the movie after losing his wife. And then he just picked it up and he became who he was meant to become by the end of the movie. There was a very natural progression to what he went through throughout the film, the obstacles he faced, and how he overcame them. Another highlight of this movie who helped him along that journey was Pedro Pascal. When I think of Pedro Pascal, I think of this chameleon-like character who somehow managed to reinvent himself in every character he plays, whether it be the Mandalorian, Joel from The Last of Us, he's going to be playing Mr. Fantastic, whether he's playing Maxwell Lord in the terrible Wonder Woman movie. He is just a chameleon. He really knocks it out of the park in every role that he does. And this is no different. He plays Marcus Arcadius or Acacius. I think that's how you say it, Marcus Acacius. He plays Connie Nielsen's husband, this general. He is the person who ordered the killing of Lucius's wife. So there's this huge revenge story, but then we find this very layered character. And I think Pedro Pascal was the perfect person to play this character because you can see him being a very villainous person, but at the same time, he's a general meant to carry out orders of these two terrible emperors. And we're going to talk about those two emperors in a little bit. But his character is so nuanced and layered. At the beginning, we see this very fierce and very fearless general jump out and lead from the front on the battlefield and take out all of these enemy soldiers almost by himself. But he just, his soldiers were having a hard time. And this is why they followed him, because he jumped out there and just took charge and fought and commanded his army to overcome, the initial army that they took over. You see this very stoic general, and then you see him at home with his wife, and he's this very caring, passionate, loving person who does all of this in service of Rome and in service of making a better life for him and his wife. And I really like that dynamic of his character, because at the beginning, you see Lucius wanting to kill this character because he just seems so cold and callous. But of course, if you've ever been in the military, you understand when given orders, you have to execute those orders. And especially in war, it's either your life or their life. And at the end of the day, I'm always going to pick my life, right? And he did the exact same thing. I thought Pedro Pascal was wonderful in this movie, but everything can't be a highlight. There are definitely some lowlights in this movie that downgrades this movie from being even a good movie to being just an okay movie. And one of the biggest lowlights to me, and this is going to sound sacrilegious, don't come at me in the comments, but I think it was Denzel. And it wasn't Denzel Washington himself, it was his character. The original Gladiator was very straight to the point. It was a revenge story. We found, his wife got killed. He wanted to kill Commodus. That was his sole focus in the movie. And we had a focus like that in Lucius, who wanted to kill the general because the general killed his wife. That was his number one goal. Macromus, the slave owner, the one who owned the gladiators, he had other ulterior motives to come to power. He wanted power, and Denzel kept saying that, I want power. I want power. Oh my God, I do a terrible Denzel, but he kept saying the word power throughout the movie, which I thought was funny. Will turn into a drinking game one day. How many times he says power, how many times you could take a shot, you're going to be drunk by the end of the second act because he says it a lot of times, right? He wants power. And then there's this huge Game of Thrones like political subplot that just takes too long. It would have worked better as just a montage of like money being changed in the background. It would have been fantastic worked out that way, but they didn't do that. They just let the whole second act going into the third act, deep into the third act, just go into this whole political thing, this whole political subplot that, while somewhat interesting, doesn't fit with a Gladiator movie. I was waiting for more fighting. And then there was a point of the movie where I thought it was over because it was kind of confusing. They kept saying the last day of the games, the last day of the games. So on the last day of the games, when this somewhat anticlimactic fight happens, I'm thinking the fighting is over. But no, wait, there's more. They have one more fight that comes out of left field. It just didn't work for me. I was there for mindless action with these great set pieces that Ridley Scott is known to do. We got that, but then we got probably 30 extra minutes of stuff that just didn't need to be there. Of course, you have Denzel, so you want to prominently feature him in the movie, but I think they overdid it. This wasn't Denzel's starring role. This was Paul Mescal's starring role, and they just overdid it with the Denzel subplot, and that kind of took me out of the movie. By the time we got to the third act and we actually got to the quote-unquote final battle, I was kind of out of it. And luckily, Paul Mescal gave this really kick-ass speech. I mean, he gave this amazing speech at the end of the movie that rallied the troops. And I was like, okay, all right, you got me back, but keep me here. And then the last fight was kind of lackluster. Like everything before that was pretty badass. The last fight, kind of lackluster. And it kind of goes in a place I didn't really expect it to go, but at the same time, I didn't need it to go there. So the ending of the film was a little bit off, other than the great military speech that Paul Mescal gives. At 2 points at the end of the movie, he gives two really good speeches, but I didn't need that. I honestly wanted to see him go out on a sword. He kind of didn't do that. Then that was a major low light to me. And that was kind of brought on by the emperors. Two emperors, Joseph Quinn, I think his name is John Hetchinger from Thelma. He was in the film Thelma. He plays one of the emperors. They're the two twin emperors who are just like Commodus, two versions of Commodus, the confident and smart Commodus, and then the simple Jack Commodus. They lean so heavy into the simple Jack in this movie. The immortal words of Robert Downey Jr. in Tropic Thunder, never go full simple Jack. And boy, oh boy, this character went full simple Jack. Like, he had this pet monkey that was crawling all over him while he was delivering the lines. At some point, the monkey was crawling on Denzel's character. And it took everything in my being to not bust out laughing. It was hilarious. It was so awkward. This little monkey was his little pet, and he was everywhere on his face. I mean, his character was so special and so off-putting at the same time. They wanted to give us another Commodus. They gave us two. It's a sequel, bigger, better. I get it. It simply didn't work for me. Neither one of these characters. Joseph Quinn was just there. His brother, Simple Jack, was just there. They served as the evil empire heads to move the story along. But towards the end, it was so outlandish. It was so cartoonish. I keep saying Simple Jack. If you've never seen Tropic Thunder, shame on you. Go watch Tropic Thunder before you go see Gladiator II, and you'll know exactly what I mean by that. That was a major low light for me. The way the second act played out, the way the third act played out with all these political machinations and not enough people being beheaded just didn't work for me. I didn't come there for the political subtext. I've seen enough of that in our country. Didn't want to see it in this Ridley Scott film. I wanted to see gladiators fight. I wanted to be entertained. I was somewhat entertained. So, who is Gladiator II for? Who did Ridley Scott make this movie for? This movie is for the fans of the original Gladiator, the fans of Ridley Scott himself, the bombastic, great production design, no use of green screen, great director that he is. It looked very practical, other than, of course, the rabid monkeys and the killer sharks. But at the same time, it looked fantastic. The movie was beautiful. This movie is for action fans. If you are a fan of Pedro Pascal, you're going to enjoy this. If you're a fan of Denzel Washington, you're definitely going to go see this, because there are a lot of people who said he did a fantastic job in this movie. Me not being one of them, but he didn't do a terrible job, because Denzel can't do a terrible job even if he tried. If you're a fan of loud, bombastic action movies, you're going to enjoy this with some slight tinges of political subtext. I had a good time at the theater. It wasn't the worst movie I've seen this year. It wasn't the Joker Folie à Deux. It was a very entertaining actioner that I love. I love my good action movies. It wasn't great, but it wasn't bad by any stretch of the imagination. If you go into this film expecting it to be better than the original Gladiator, you're probably going to be disappointed. So go into it with an open mind and just enjoy the show that you're seeing in front of you. You're going to have a solid time at the theater. But have you seen Gladiator II? What did you think of it? Did you like it? Did you love it? Were you not entertained? I sure was. But if you did, go ahead and drop a comment down below. Let me know what you thought of Gladiator. Let me know if it lived up to the expectations that you set for it. And while you're down there, go ahead and like and subscribe to the Have You Seen That With T YouTube channel. We're back. I'm going to see Wicked next. And hopefully my Elgato teleprompter will work this time and save my script. I lost my script. This one was completely off the cuff. I didn't want to put off putting out another video. I need to put out more videos. School is kind of dying down. Your boy is getting straight A's. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? But I'm doing great in school. I have some more time to put out these videos. I want to build the subscriber count up. We got to get above 100. We got to get above 150. We got to get above 200. We're just going to keep moving forward. I'm going to put a lot more effort into this content moving forward. And I really hope you're with me along for this journey. But until next time, it is your boy T, and I'll catch you later.